You want to know these really well. I have a feeling these could be on the test on Friday because there's only two non-Western sections, Americas and Africa. I think one of them will be on the test. All right, let's take a look at a 30-minute write. This one, you've read it, but when you break it down, it's a 30-minute write, and it's comparing the gates. Don't worry about it this year, but to either Machu Picchu or Garden Versailles. And this is the type of question where they'll give you the image of the gates, but they won't give you the image, and they'll give you a list. This is the format for Friday. So they gave you the gates, but let's just take a look at Machu Picchu. You won't have the image on Friday, but for our purposes and for learning, there's the image. So when you break it down, it's a side-by-side, but the content is basically the site, the mountains of the Andes, the audience, the royal family of the Incas, the function, a royal retreat, the culture is Inca. How was it transformed? You talk about how it would go to the mountain, use terraces, and it would integrate the site into nature, into the mountain. What was the experience? This is a little bit of the purpose of the place. It was to have a nice, pleasant experience for the royal retreat. But the other thing is it's got an observatory, which would look at the heavens. It's high up. There's a connection with the cosmos and the gods. Or for Versailles, the site, Versailles, hunting lodge, audience would be the court of the king function. It's the home of the king, but it's also the center of the universe. So site is the center of the universe. Culture is France. How was it transformed? You took a forest and a hunting lodge, transformed it into a garden and a palace. What was the experience of the transformation? Here the experience is to dazzle you with the king's power. The power to turn a forest into a garden, the power of the Sun King Louis. All right, then this one here is an excellent question. I'd really be ready for this one. You already read it, but you break it down and it comes down to this. It's talking about these two, and it's about time, and it's asking you what was the major historical event that took place? The Spanish conquest of the Americans, the Mesoamerican, and then the Europeans. The audience, this one was for the king or for the viceroy or for the Europeans. This audience was for the people of the Aztec culture. What was visual and contextual evidence about time? Aztec time was circular, about eras, and about death. Thus, it uses the circle. It's got a knife in the tongue, the idea of human sacrifice. Also, this was used as an altar of human sacrifice. It's got the subtext of death. This one, and circular time. And that's the idea of the sun rising and sacrifice, circular time. This is European time. It's linear time. It goes from 100 to 1500 to 1600. And on here you have the Aztecs conquer, and then the Aztecs are conquered. Circular time, linear time, Aztec time, European time. All right, then this is one that is a practice one. So they're going to give, this for Friday, they'll give you an image like this, then a long question, and it might be compare and contrast. But when you break it down, quite simply, it's a compare and contrast between this work and one of these two works. On Friday, they will not give you the images. They'll give you a list. You don't have to use this list, but it's recommended. Usually they're helping you. They're trying to give you images that are good for this prompt. So that's what it is. So work number one, you break it down. How does this convey cultural or national identity? It's about Plains Indians of Wyoming, and it shows their culture, their identity as Plains hunters, and how they used to live. Specifically, visually, iconographically, how? It's got bison, it's got teepees, it has hunters, it has warriors. This is the way they used to live. Then contextual, so visually, that's the visual evidence. Contextually, you would talk about they were Plains Indians, they were hunters, they had the sun dance, the bison was the center of their culture, and those would be those two aspects there. So that's number one. It would be compare contrast, but then we'll go to list two here, and let's do each one. You would only do one, but let's be ready for both these. Rivera, Dream on a Sunday Afternoon. Cultural national identity of Mexico. He's talking about the history of Mexico, a history of exploitation and a history of suffering, and maybe a dream of some better future. Visually, how does he do it? You would talk about, on the one panel, he shows the Mexican Revolution. The other panel, he shows conquest. Then he shows the dictatorship. He's showing the history of Mexico in the mural and an outdoor public mural. And then contextually, we go along with it. Mexico was conquered, was oppressed. Then there was a dictatorship, which was also oppressive. Then they had a Mexican Revolution. And then his idea of a dream is perhaps the idea that someday this might be better. It's a public mural, so he's really announcing this on a public park in Mexico. If you did this one here, Jacob Lawrence, this is cultural national identity of blacks that left the South and went to the North during the Great Migration. He's showing the black experience in a segregated racist society of 1940. He's also a member of the Harlem Renaissance, which is this explosion of culture in New York. Visually, how does he do it? Well, with simple form, he shows the separation of the blacks and the whites, the indifference of the whites, the racism of the whites, and visually he shows the separation, and then contextually, that's just the information. They went to the North, they did suffer discrimination, and he covers both those there. All right, that's it. Know those really, really well. Diego Rivera, the Aztec and the front piece, and Jacob Lawrence as well.